Boruto has once again found himself in a very tough position. All the abilities that he learned over the past 3 years meant absolutely nothing in the face of Jura. Well, except for one, that being Fine Thunder God. This ability was his saving grace throughout the entire fight, almost as annoying as Sasuke's Amenegetic Aura, which I'm sure Jura shares this annoyance with Ishiki Otsutsuki. With that said, there's only one person that truly carries on Ishiki's essence, and that's Kawaki himself. Yes, Kawaki's back and he's apparently at full strength, absolutely decimating Jura on the battlefield. A far cry from the Kawaki Delta thought needed some milk, I will say. So things are looking good for Team Humanity, but there's a lot to discuss, so let's start from the top. Now Jura looks a bit sassy here, I'm not sure what he's doing, it's pretty crazy. But this cover has a bit more text than they usually do. The first one says Boruto vs Jura reaches its climax. What will Boruto do when he can't use Uzuhiko? The second one says the savage man-eating demon follows his inquisition. We then skip over to the first page of the chapter that has a side text that says Mitsuki in the midst of a fierce battle. Konohamaru follows Boruto's orders for a rendezvous. We then see that Mitsuki has dealt with all the Clawgrams in his vicinity seemingly by himself in Sage Mode. And I mentioned this in a spoiler as well, but this gives some inclination towards how Mitsuki scales currently in TBV. I mean, if he needs Sage Mode to take care of the Clawgrams, that does imply that his power scales somewhat to their level. That will say that that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It could be that he just wanted to do it very quickly, so that's why he entered Sage Mode. Both interpretations could be correct, just not at the same time. So we'll see. Now Mitsuki then tells Konohamaru that Araya took Ryu's Thorn Soul Bulb and Yodo's body towards where Shinki was turned into a tree. Oh, and by the way, Sarada is still unconscious and she's being carried by Mitsuki, so no Sarada to one-shot Jura as many people theorized. Now Konohamaru then gives Mitsuki, the spiel that it's unfortunate what happened to Yodo, but that shows how prepared you need to be to take on the Shinjus as opponents. Very ironic coming from you. But anyways, she'd likely rejoice if she knew the mission was a success. But Mitsuki, the mission isn't over yet. Mitsuki then says, "You're referring to Mr. Jura, I take it." I confirm that he was flying over towards where you and Matsui were fighting, without showing much interest in us or Ryu's Thorn Soul Bulb. What is his objective? Konohamaru then says, "I was about to be killed by Matsuri when suddenly Boruto arrived and saved my life. But that's when Jura appeared. I assume his objective is to kill Boruto. To them it seems like killing Boruto is a higher priority than reviving their dead friends." Mitsuki then says, "Sensei, I wish to assist Boruto in taking down Jura." Konohamaru then says, "No, you can't. Our mission was to retrieve the Thorn Soul." Boruto understands that as well. "The only reason I was able to escape is because he's still drawing Jura's attention." Mitsuki then says, "But still." So yeah, I mentioned this in my spoiler video as well, that they might play into the entire thing about protecting your comrades, and that's way more important than actually completing a mission, which is something they touched on in Naruto with Obito, then Kakashi, and then Naruto himself, of course, the title character. And they might play on it here as well, and Mitsuki might actually go help Boruto because he values Boruto's life over, the success of the mission. Though I do understand, I did get a few comments, people saying that, because of omnipotence, Mitsuki doesn't see Boruto as a comrade, and this applies to Konohamaru as well. So why would that philosophy apply here? Well, I believe based on what we've seen so far, Mitsuki seems to be swaying towards the side of Boruto. He wants to help him. Even in this literal panel right here, he's saying that he wants to go assist Boruto against Jura. And when Konohamaru gives him the logical reason why they shouldn't, he still says, "but still." Right? He's showing concern for Boruto, which means that he sees him as somewhat of a comrade. That's why he wants to help him. And even Konohamaru himself here, he doesn't make any sly comments towards Boruto about him being the Okage killer or whatever. He just gives the logical reason and says that Boruto understands that as well. He's not talking about Boruto in the vein of him being an enemy. He's talking about him in the vein of him being a comrade that's making a worthy sacrifice for them to escape with the Thorn Soul Bulb. So they might not love Boruto as it was in part 1, but they do at this point see him as a comrade that's helping them to take down the Shinju. So that's pretty much the point I was trying to make with that comment. Now Konohamaru then says something very interesting, and it plays into something that happens later on in the chapter, but he tells Mitsuki that our objective is to get to the place where we first met Araya and Yodo. That's where we're going. Those were Boruto's orders. It seems like he has some sort of plan in mind. We've got no choice but to believe him. So at first, it seemed as if Boruto had some plan to teleport them away or use some kind of ability, maybe reverse summoning, which, by the way, if Konohamaru was competent, he should have learned that ability and they could have escaped a long time ago. But anyways, maybe that was what Boruto is gonna do. But no, there's something else that happens later on. I'm sure you guys have read the chapter, but we'll get to that point when we get to that point in this video. Now we then skip over to the fight, the actual fight, which I'm sure you guys are here for, with Boruto versus Jura, and it started, funnily, with Boruto already being damaged. It seems like he was sniped by Jura's laser or Bija bomb, whatever you guys want to call it, but Boruto says that he missed his vitals, but the wound is still deep. It's a lot more damage than he thought it would be. So Jura starts spamming the ability, of course, because, you know, if it works, why stop doing it? And he goes on to say that the biggest problem with his Tail Beast bomb is the obvious wind-up action that it needs to prepare it. And he says, would a rifle type that can snipe from a long range be more effective? Or would a close range shotgun type give me the advantage against an opponent like him? And this dialogue here is really important, and I think it can be interpreted in one of two ways. So for one, it seems as if Jura is having a lot of trouble trying to catch Boruto. And this is mostly because of FTG, of course, but we've also seen Boruto in this very chapter literally flying away using his literal movement speed to dodge Jura's abilities and even his strikes. And also later on in the chapter itself, when Jura tries to strike him with his pointy finger, Boruto is able to react to him by using his hands. His hands were apart from each other. He was able to place them together and activate FTG before Jura was able to touch him. So on one instance, FTG is explainable. It's instantaneous movement. It makes sense why Jura can't touch him when he activates it. But there's also a process that's needed to activate it, which is Boruto using his hands to make those signs. So on one hand, Jura is stronger, but he also isn't that much faster. Boruto is fast enough to react to his attacks and his punches and his kicks to block them and even activate his abilities before Jura can touch him. So one can argue that Jura is stronger than base Boruto, but he isn't that much faster. And the next interpretation is that Jura is way faster, but he's just holding back at this point in time because he doesn't need to use his full power. And that interpretation, I think, makes more sense because Jura has to then fight a more stronger version of Boruto and Kawaki later on in the chapter. So why would Jura's speed be comparable to base Boruto? It has to be faster and stronger than him. So that makes logical sense, and I think that's the one we should go with. Now, if you understand that Jura is holding back to some extent, what Boruto does next by teleporting behind him, grabbing his sword, and then speed blitzing Jura by cutting off his leg makes sense. Now Jura does show some reaction to this on his face, like it seems like the Shinju do feel pain to some extent, and he says, oh, well played. So he's not screaming, he's just showing emotion, okay? But then we get to him and Boruto going back to back with punches, and Boruto is actually reacting to all of them. So they're basically just doing the Dragon Ball Z stuff where, you know, they and no one gets hit. That's pretty much what's going on. Now I will say that Boruto seems to be underpowered here because he does say, damn it, I don't stand a chance against him in terms of strength. And it reminds me of that scene where Naruto was going back and forth with Kaguya, and they're doing the chakra clash thing where they're punching with the chakra fist, and Naruto is holding his own against Kaguya, right? They're even. But when you look at Kaguya's face, she's just calm, she's not really trying, and Naruto is trying his very best. So that's pretty much what this scene kind of mirrors here. Now Jura then grabs Boruto's hand, and that's where we get the spoiler that we saw earlier, where Boruto does the purple lightning and shocks him. So no, there's no Jogan, Boruto simply just shocks him, and what caused Jura to have the shocked expression on his face in the latter panel was the fact that Boruto teleported away using Flying Thunder God. So yeah, the ability is pretty annoying, as I've said multiple times. Now Boruto then brought back one of my favorite Battle Genius moments of Naruto from part 1, or at least it seems like that's what's happening, because Boruto threw the kunai at Jura. It seems like Jura shifted to the side and it flew past him, and then the kunai transformed into Boruto. So it seems as if Boruto transformed into the kunai, created a shadow clone, and had it hurl him towards Jura, and then, you know, reverted back to his full form, which is similar to what Naruto did back in part 1 to save Kakashi from Zabuza. Though I will say that it is unclear that that's what happened here, because you could say that Boruto simply teleported to the kunai using Flying Thunder God because the kunais are marked with the formula. But it does show a poof of smoke on the panel, which I'm not sure why it would show that for Flying Thunder God, so that's why I think he used that ability instead. Though if he did use that ability, it's kind of crazy that Boruto was able to create a shadow clone and hurl himself at Jura without Jura even noticing. So that kind of leads me in the direction that that's not what happened. But if anyone has any clue, maybe I'm wrong, you guys can let me know in the comment section. Maybe something I missed here, who knows. Now Boruto then tried to slash Jura using his katana, but Jura reacted to him, which again kinda does prove the entire holding back point, because at multiple points Boruto is able to kinda get the drop on Jura, but then at other times Jura is able to easily react to him even at point blank range. So I think Jura is really just playing with Boruto at this point in time. He then flies off towards him very quickly and knees him in the chin, so it's kind of a speed blitz, I will say. It then shows that Boruto is huffing and puffing, he's getting tired. I mean, the guy is spamming Flying Thunder God, so at some point he has to get tired, okay, because, you know, stamina creates chakra. If you waste your stamina on chakra, you have less stamina to power your body, you're gonna get tired. And Jura starts to laugh and says your movements have become dull, Otsutsuki Boruto. And he says, rather than attempting to land a tail beast bomb, it seems as though it would be faster to clobber you to death. He then zips towards him once again, landing a direct hit in Boruto's gut, sending him crashing into the ground. This is then followed up by a Bijou bomb, but luckily Boruto is able to fly away before it detonates. Though unfortunately for Boruto, Jura isn't done yet and he appears directly behind him and tries to strike him again. This time Boruto is able to react to him and blocks it using his sword. Though to his surprise and to the surprise of the audience, the sword then cracks. So yeah, Sasuke's Kusanagi blade is now badly damaged, and I know what will happen from this panel is that there are multiple people at this very moment rewatching the past scenes in anime and reading the manga again, chapter 1, to see if Boruto's sword has a crack on it. And I will say, that is a good thing to do. I know it's totally fine to see if it, you know, lines up perfectly. But it could also be the case that Boruto fixes this later on, okay? So it's not an inconsistency, even if it looks a bit inconsistent, okay? I'm just saying. Now Jura then lands a direct hit, sending Boruto crashing to the ground, and it seems as if Boruto is now unconscious. We then skip over to Ada, who says, at this rate, Boruto-kun is really going to be killed. I don't want this. I can't bear to watch it any longer. Then we skip over to Kashin Koji, who is stressing out, man. It's crazy. Bro is going crazy. Ada tries to press him to see if he has anything to say about what's happening, but he tells her to be quiet. It's coming. A renewal. Or a update, you know, which one you want to use, it's fine. We then see that Kashin Koji is having one of his visions once again. So he's seeing the strips of film that was shown in chapter 13, and he sees multiple futures. We see one with Inojin. It looks like he's in Orochimaru's hideout, which is where Kashin Koji is. Or it could also be the place where they have Shinki's body. So either one is possible, we'll see. More importantly, it does show Jura holding his right eye, and he's looking up at someone. We then skip over to Jura standing above Boruto's unconscious body, and he says, oh, you're still breathing. You're tougher than I thought. I suppose this much is to be expected of an Otsutsuki. But to keep hold of your master's sword, even in your passed out state. I shall honor your commendable struggle, Otsutsuki Boruto. I shall at the very least erase you in one hit. He then flies up into the sky and, you know, uses, you know, typical Bijou bomb stuff. But just before he's able to actually fire it, he's then impaled by a black rod. It's also then revealed that Kawaki has now arrived. He's also back in his new gen or next generation fit. At least the jacket part itself has changed. And he's also brandishing the hidden leaf headband on his belt buckle. Or at least above his belt buckle, because the belt is lower than it. Anyways, belts are weird in Boruto, okay? He then says he's a real monster. All this and he still ain't dead. Ada then starts gushing and saying, Kawaki, what's going on? Hello, Koji? Now Koji finally snaps back to reality and says, the prescience update. It's been approximately 6 days since the last one. Kawaki's arrival. It's a development I'm just now seeing for the first time. Did Boruto tell Kawaki something in the past few days? And this is really important here because it kinda hints towards what's happening here. He says, did Boruto tell Kawaki something? Why would Boruto telling Kawaki something in the past few days explain this discrepancy in prescience? Well, this was explained back in chapter 16. Once someone knows the future changes. The more people know the future, the more the future changes. So Boruto telling Kawaki about the future, which is something he came to find out later on, he wasn't supposed to know this back in chapter 15, that Amado has limiters on his body. This changed the course of history. So Kawaki can now be considered a singularity to some extent. Now I'm not going to go too in depth into this, but I've said this in prior videos. Prescience isn't as overpowered as people made it out to be. Yes, Koji is able to see infinite possible futures, but those futures also change based on him simply knowing about them. He said this himself. And then when he also tells Boruto about them, and he then tells Ada about them, and Boruto tells Kawaki about them, those futures are changing continuously. So one simply can't rely on the futures shown to them by prescience, not just because they are changing continuously, but also due to the nature of those futures as well, them being possibilities, not actual existing futures. And this debunks the entire theory that Boruto has a multiverse. That's not what this is. These are just multiple possible futures that haven't happened as yet, and they will change based on the actions taken by the characters that know of them. And what makes this even worse is the fact that Kashin Koji can't control the ability. So it doesn't seem like Koji can simply just sit down and say, let me go see what the possible futures are at this point in time. He has to wait on an update that can take maybe days, weeks, who knows. This time at least it took 6 days for him to get an update, and a lot happened since then. So to some extent, Koji is literally just hoping for the best at this point in time, which is kind of funny. Now then skip over to Konohamaru and Mitsuki once again, and Mitsuki says, I was just wondering why Boruto chose this place. Maybe one of his metals is lying around here somewhere. That's when Delta pops up and says, ah, there you are, up here. Konohamaru, Mitsuki, Sarada. Seems like the three of you are doing okay. And this part is really important, which I'm gonna go more in depth in a follow-up video, and I kinda touched on this in the past as well. I do wonder, because Boruto sent them to this location, because maybe he knew that's where Delta would show up, not because he was planning to teleport them out of there, because based on what Koji said in the prior chapter, he wouldn't have enough time to teleport himself. How would he have enough time to teleport anyone else? So obviously that wasn't Boruto's plan. So Delta showing up at this exact position implies that Boruto knew that was going to happen. Now it could also be the case that he was in some kind of communication with Kawaki on the side, and that's how he knew. But it could also be the case that Boruto saw the future using Momoshiki's ability to see the future, and that's how he knew this was going to happen, which is why he sent them to that location. This also plays into how he knew that Kawaki would show up. He already saw the future where that happened. And this is important because Koji didn't see that future, but Boruto did. I wonder why. This kind of implies that Boruto's ability to see the future is more definitive, while Koji's isn't. I mean, it literally sees possibilities, so I guess that's just 100% correct. But yeah, it seems that Boruto is able to see the future, or maybe we're just missing something. Who knows? We'll see. Now we then skip over to Jura versus Kawaki, and Jura tries to strike him with his fingers, but it seems like Kawaki shrunk to a very small size, and that's how he was able to escape. He then reappears behind Jura and fires off multiple rods. I will say that Jura was able to turn around fully before the rods were able to strike him, which implies that he's faster than Kawaki physically, and this should make sense. Kawaki is in base. Now Jura then fires a Bijou Bomb, an actual Bijou Bomb towards Kawaki. He doesn't shrink it, he doesn't absorb it using karma, he simply dodges, and then appears next to Boruto. He then asks him if he's gonna stay there the entire time sleeping, but Boruto is apparently now conscious, and he says, sure took your sweet time getting here, crummy bastard, or you know, whatever, insert whatever insult you guys want to put there. But it seems like again, Boruto saw that this was going to happen. Okay, I could be wrong, but we'll see. Jura then says, Kawaki, what is this? I sense a power incomparable to the one I met previously. Kawaki then starts activating his karma seal and says, grit your teeth and brave the pain, Boruto. If you end up going out of control, I'll kill you on the spot. Boruto then grabs his hand and says, don't mind me, go for it. Kawaki then says, come at me, you shithead. And that's when you see Jura flying towards him and Kawaki in his full karma state. Not V2, V1 that is. So that's where the chapter ends. It's one of, if not the best chapter in TBV so far, in my opinion, and I'd never say that lightly, so I just want to make that clear. And also, I don't think we should take much from this chapter when it comes to actual power scaling, because I know some people are going to say base Boruto is equal to Jura, base Kawaki is equal to Jura, or stronger than Jura because Kawaki was able to land some hits. But I want to keep in mind, if you look at it logically, If Kawaki feels he needs to activate his Karma Seal to fight Jura, then obviously base Kawaki isn't strong enough, and I'm sure Karma 1 Kawaki isn't going to defeat Jura. They need to fight together, which is what Boruto said in chapter 15. And if Boruto has seen the future, he knows this to be true. So I just want to keep that in mind. Just use the narrative as well to aid you in the power scaling, and don't just rely on the panels themselves, because if a character is holding back, you can't just use feats, you also have to use narrative as well to aid you in the scaling. But yeah, with that said, if you guys liked it, drop a like down below. If you're new, subscribe, and if you want to join the Discord, the link will be in the description. If you want to become a member, the link is also there as well. But yeah, I appreciate the support, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good day.